Thank you very much. It is a great pleasure and honor for me to participate at your conference today. And I would also like to thank the organizers and all participants I saw in that list for your commitment and the time that you invest in this conversation to, let me say, celebrate UN Security Council Resolution 1325. I much appreciate today's event. And I also would like to thank Nuruddin Shiri for presenting us the most important findings of their research work on women in the Israeli peace movement later on.
في حركة السلام الإسرائيلية في وقت لاحق.
Dear participants, Resolution 1325
أيها المشاركون، القرار رقم 1325
I have to switch off the dolmetsch. Resolution 1325, unanimously adopted by the UN Security Council on the 31st of October 2000, is a very powerful text. It was and continues to be a powerful text. The resolution triggered a lot of changement and caused a lot of awareness. It was the result of an enormous civil society engagement. Much has been achieved since then, and Resolution 1325 continues to be a real game changer. But at the same time, we have to be painfully aware that today, 20 years later, and 9 hard-won Security Council resolutions later, even more work remains to be done. I'm also well aware of the countless events and activities taking place these days all around Israel with high commitment from the field up to the Knesset, in and outside the Knesset, to discuss Resolution 1325. And it is a true pleasure for me to witness many of them. This year clearly is marked by the COVID-19 pandemic. And this pandemic probably has become the cause for the most dramatic backlash in the advancement of women's rights since 2000. Women have turned out to fight at the forefront against the propagation of the virus, to carry the burden of unemployment, to carry the burden of responsibility for child and family care in hospitals and at home, and everything at the same time. And in the wake of COVID-19, domestic violence against women is dramatically on the rise again. Against this background, it is comforting to see the courageous work being done by the organizations represented here in our today's meeting. Let me just mention some examples that I found particularly relevant and important. You work for weapon-free kitchen tables to reduce violence at home. You succeeded to ensure that social workers at the local hotlines for the victims of home violence were acknowledged as essential workers during lockdown. You succeeded in increasing the number of women as part of the National Action Team on the Corona crisis to more than 60%. You prepared the 1325 toolkit box. But allow me to recall us some numbers that prove that your action is still needed, that much more action is needed also in Israel. Between only May and July this year, 4,700 police files were opened on family violence cases compared to only 4,700 less during the same period in 2019. Between March and August 2020, 14 Israeli women were murdered by their spouses or other family members. 70%, 70, of the newly unemployed since the start of the second lockdown have been women. 84% of one-parent families in Israel were headed by women. 26 were poor prior to the corona crisis. More than 30% are now poor. Equality between men and women in national and international decision making is not at all a favor that could or not be granted to women. No, this is in fact the only way peace will be built efficiently and durably. But 95% of the governments of the world, including most of conflict-entangled countries, are still be led by men. 20 years ago, Resolution 1325 called for national action plans to be adopted to pursue the goals of the resolution. Those plans, meanwhile, have been developed and adopted in more than 60 countries, and I know for a couple of more that will follow. Dear participants, looking at the situation of the implementation of 1325 in Germany, we also see positive developments, but how much more it needs to be done. We are in Germany working within the framework of the second National Action Plan. German foreign politics, meanwhile, is committed to strengthen the force and impact of Resolution 1325. The role of women in peacekeeping and in conflicts is a prime focus of Germany's current UN Security Council membership. The aim is to anchor gender equality, participation, and the protection of women as key elements of foreign and security policy globally. We also advocate for this issue in all fora, international fora, particularly also at the EU and within NATO. Germany is globally committed to progress in the WPS area, and we are implementing suitable measures worldwide and tailored to local needs. We are committed to the implementation of Resolution 1325 and its 9 subsequent resolutions, some of them initiated by Germany itself. I would like to mention particularly Resolution 2242, focusing on the threats to the security of women and girls in pandemics, a resolution that today is certainly even more relevant than it was at the time of its unanimous adoption already 5 years ago. The German commitment is outlined in 4 thematic priorities. First, full effective participation of women at all levels in peace processes and security policy. Second, protection of all people from sexualized violence in conflicts. Third, participation of women in all conflict prevention measures. And fourth, gender-sensitive consideration of the needs of men and women in aid, reconstruction, and reintegration. What action do we do as the German government? What action do we want to take as German government? There's a couple of areas, and I want to mention just some as examples. We want to systematically include the gender perspective in conflict prevention. We want to strengthen the participation of women in all phases and at all levels of the presentation and settlement of conflict, stabilization, peace building, reconstruction. We want to strengthen the leadership roles of women. We need to analyze and to take into account the concerns and interests of women and girls when it comes to development, peace, security, and humanitarian measures. And we want to improve protection against sexual and gender-specific violence at national and international level, and to counteract the lack of punishment, the impunity of perpetrators. Germany is about to mainstreaming WPS in its entire foreign policy, from bottom to top. Like women, peace and security will become a compulsory part of the training of German diplomats, and a women, peace and security focal point will be installed at German embassies. Another example, Germany successfully campaigned for women to be part of the future police when training police officers in Afghanistan. Now more than 3,000 female police officers serve in Afghanistan. And Germany is working to have many more female peacemakers and peacekeepers in international conflict areas. Therefore, we are also working to reform all relevant institutions where we have to strengthen the female perspective and make it more visible. For instance, our state ministers at the Foreign Office do not join any panel if there is not at least one female speaker on the podium. That is hard business, but otherwise you can't achieve your goals. Dear participants, let me underline of how important it also is in the context of the Middle East peace process to overcome the barriers that prevent women's participation in decision-making processes and public discourse around the conflict. During my time as German ambassador to Israel, I have again and again met extraordinary women committed to dialogue and peace on both sides, strong, self-confident women. It is absolutely imperative that these women come to the negotiating table. The involvement of women, female activists, and decision makers directly contributes to increasing the chances of long-lasting agreement. I'm glad that the discourse of peace is back in the Israeli public agenda. I hope that women, that all of you can contribute to that discourse in a much more visible and much more powerful way. So thank you for having me invited to your gathering. I wish us a fruitful and inspiring event. And I hope that this event will benefit your work and your networking to achieve peace and stability for the whole region. Thank you very much.